What I wanted to do was dealer's choice. So I wanted to pick two archetypes that sounded really cool to me that we haven't rolled on the table yet, because no matter what I do, I cannot roll the really cool guys. I get stuck rolling like the same stuff over and over again, and I've rolled so many tank specs, like tank archetypes. I'm just like, ugh. So I'm gonna pick a couple, and we're gonna go from there today. Opposed to letting fate decide, let's just jump in and grab a couple of the cool ones that I think maybe neat. Maybe it's an archetype we haven't talked about yet, and we can kind of flesh out what we think that archetype's going to be. So right off the bat, one that I've really been interested in is where Mage intersects with Summoner. So we're at Warlock, so that one seems cool to me. I think Warlock might be easier to try to come up with since we have so many Warlocks in various MMO and fantasy worlds. Other than that, I have been. I like the idea of the Bard into the Fighter. The Tell Sword sounds really cool. Really, anything with Summoner, because Summoner seems like something that I'm really going to be into. I also like the idea. I've always liked the idea of a Dervish. For those of you who don't know or haven't played anything like that tabletop wise, a Dervish is like a very agile dancing fighter. Similar to how, for a better reference, if you watch Game of Thrones, when the Mountain fought, what was the serpent, or the guy with the spear in the desert, and he danced all around him before he got brutally crushed. However, when he was dancing all around him and fighting, that's kind of what a dervish does. Very agile, dancing around, and they get, depending on what system you're in, sometimes they get bonuses for how much they're moving. They get more damage the more they move before they strike, or moving in motion, like some kind of system to play around with dancing. So Blade Dancer, where it's fighter intersects with bard, makes me think of a dervish, right? And if we made a dervish, I would almost go Valoon, just because that plays with the aesthetic. But so right off the bat, it kind of puts me in like a Tell Sword and a Blade Dancer, things that I like. I like the Warlock. These are just ideas. I do like the Mage and the Ranger, actually. I played something similar to that in a game of D&D. I think I only got to play one session with it, though. I kind of like that. I wonder... That would be a fun one to do. Spell Hunter is a cool way to say it, but, if they get Mage and Ranger, you get to pick... I guess you wouldn't because it's your primary, but a Spell Hunter would just get... it makes you think of a Mage with slightly higher range on its abilities. Maybe if it was the other, what's the other way around? A ranger and a mage is called a scion. I'd almost rather these two switch, right? I'd rather a scion be a mage and a ranger, and I'd rather spell hunter be right here at the ranger mage intersection. Because if you do that, it makes me think like the ranger could get a bunch of buffs to its ability to track, in tracking magical beast, in tracking magic users, and then you've kind of created this archetype of like an anti-mage or a mage hunter, and I really like that idea. If I could swap those two, I think I'd be happier. Because Scion to me is more of like a cleric, where they're a scion of a deity. So I guess, but mage first, because Scion makes me think magic first. Unless the only other Scion besides a couple different systems that I can imagine is like Scion from League of Legends, right? Any of these other ones just jump out of us. Broodmaster jumps out, or Brood Warden. I'm sorry. Shadow Lord, Falconer. Pretty much all the Summoner intersections are really cool to me. I do like Ranger as well. None of the ones jump out besides Warlock. Spellstone seems cool. It kind of makes me think of in Aragon, when Aragon empowered his, what is it called, the Heart of the Dragon or whatever, that little fucking stone, and he gives it to, and he blesses Roran, and Roran goes out there to be the tank and fight this guy. And the stone was on the bad guy anyway. But yeah, that seems cool. So Bladecaller. That also seems neat because that makes you think like you summon extra blades to fight with you. And one of my favorite all-time sword users was in a anime called Solier, and it was this like blade, this fighter who had a big old container of swords, and he would throw all these swords down and fight. So I really like that too. So I think my choice for the first one, let's go Bladecaller? Yeah, let's go Bladecaller. Alright, so let's make a male Bladecaller. Well, let's do it like this. We gotta pick a race. Alright, so let's do male. Race. We haven't made a lot of just plain humans. Yeah, we'll just do a basic human. I sound so disgusted, don't I? You get to play a fantasy game and you choose to play just a plain human, not even a Baloon. But, I mean, you know, could be good. Alright, male Kalar. And we're going to do a Bladecaller. So that is fighter primary. Fighter. What is that? Why is it... Boy, I can't type today either, huh? Alright, that's going to be secondary summoner. Alright, so that gives us primary fighter, secondary summoner, which is an archetype Bladecaller. So, okay. So right off the bat, let's talk about what we think a Bladecaller would be. I told you already that that's way too big. I told you already that I was thinking it would be like where you summon extra blades, because a summoner is one of the few or the only archetype where you're going to get to summon additional things. And they mentioned that they haven't really haven't really confirmed whether or not it's going to be like long-term pets that stay out and help you fight, similar to the Ranger class or the Hunter classes that we've seen in other games. But they did mention that there would be like short summons that jump up and you use an ability, they show up for a little bit, do their thing, and then they're gone again. So from a Bladecaller perspective, it seems like a fighter who's gonna have, I think, an ability or two where like a dancing sword comes out, or a shield, or maybe multiple. Like, so let's assume you're attacking, swords come out, they buff yourself, maybe they buff your critical strike or something, and the flavor wise would be that there's multiple swords out there fighting, so it distracts your enemy a little bit, which allows you to get in more of the vital spots, so your critical strike could go up. You could like summon a large sword for like a big attack, you know, similar to like some animated shows, or even video games where like you stretch up and your sword suddenly like turns into a giant broadsword and you swing down, or it turns into an axe and you slice, or a hammer and you pound the ground. Something like that, like where you're summoning weapons to assist you. Or maybe you can have defensive abilities where you summon swords that do that parry for you while you're attacking. It'd be really interesting because we know that the secondary class may add one or two new skills, but it really just enhances other abilities. So let's assume a fighter has like a strike, right? Like a sword strike. But when it strikes, maybe it's bigger now, and when he strikes, instead of just being a slash, like I said, it's like a broadsword and it slashes and it does more damage. Or maybe a side swipe and it summons like multiple swords when he swipes, or when he slashes down. So like comes down, but he summons two blades next to him, so when he comes down, now his single target is an AoE. Things like that. Or he could go into like, maybe there's like an attack stance he goes into, or a different stance as a fighter he goes into to benefit him in some way, and maybe one of those stances, because he's a Bladecaller, summons extra blades, and then he turns most of his single target stuff into AoE DPS stuff. That would be really neat. I don't know if he had a permanent pet and he could summon just a sword, like a dancing sword, and then it just mimics his attack for a little while. That would be neat. That would be really cool. Like towards the end of the skill tree, like he summons a blade or two next to him that mimics all of his abilities and his attack. So if he's auto attacking, they are. If he uses an ability, they use an ability. So that could be a really cool way to do Bladecaller. Without being too strong. I guess from a balance perspective, it would be the ability for a lot of cool single target fighter stuff to maybe do a little less damage but become AoE. Right? So that could be really cool to do it. Now, as a character as a role playing, like from a role playing perspective, how would we role play a blade caller? So obviously fighter first, so martial character, somebody who is talented martially, somebody who is adventuring out in the world, perhaps has a little bit of a arcane or magic affinity. And then as they're traveling, you could almost flavor it like they're coming into like in tune with their swords. Like if you've ever watched something to do with like Eastern Cultivation, where they're really searching for self-empowerment and enlightenment and cultivation of powers. They start dealing with something they always call sword ki, or the innate form of the sword, or the sword aura, or whatever, something like that, right? So let's say that this fighter has become really, really, really in tune with their sword, to the point where they're almost like they're not necessarily summoning, but when they get the blade caller moniker for getting level 25 and picking that secondary class summoner, they're almost so in tune that they are manifesting multiple weapons. Not like summoning them from a different plane or into existence, but manifesting the energy of their weapon into multiples. Like mirror images, or I guess that's more speed, but you know what I mean? Like they're manifesting multiple. So less of that. So actually, if we're doing that and we're talking sword ki and we're kind of giving it that feel, maybe the first one needs to be a Rinkai. Also because they may be my favorite race. Because this gives me the idea of this feudal Japan Rinkai, inspired Rinkai, who's like dedicated himself to the sword, dedicated himself to the blade, not to the sword and shield, but the blade, martial prowess. It's in his community, it's in his culture, and then as they continue, they're focusing on this blade, and then a little bit of arcane favor or whatever, and as he's going through it, he manifests this sword ki, which manifests these multiple swords, and now he's a quote-unquote blade caller. So I kind of like that idea. So I think we're going to go in that vein. Male Rinkai, so we need a name. Obviously, the first thing we do is go find us some cool Rinkai names, or we'll just look for orc names. Or you know what we could look for? How about this? An Oni is like a demon, right? In Japanese stories and myths. 71 Japanese Oni names you haven't heard before. Let's see if we can find one. The reason I say this is because you could say kind of that your character is like a sword demon. Or just, he doesn't have to be evil, but maybe he was named this at birth from a line of Rinkai who have always dedicated themselves to the blade. Right? So let's kind of just roll with this and see what female Oni names, D&D Oni names. Who appears in famous Oni names. Baku. Japanese one was a lion-headed ghost known as the Eater of Nightmares. Terrifying. Kirin. Hey, we have those. Yep. Tatsu. Japanese dragons. Okay. That's terrifying. Hell's King, who serves Hell's King and Chief Judge. Two popular names that you use for another fantasy character. Hozuki. Lum. I'm looking for anything that kind of has to do with a sword or a blade. Kuma's a classic, right? Japanese Beast. Jesse. Just Jesse. Uncle Jesse from Full House is apparently a Oni. Kappa, yeah. Kudan is a name that is one of the top used names. That's all I get. Kudan. We know Orochi. You know what? Let's just do this. It's a popular name. Kudan. Let's use it, right? I like it. We'll come up with that in a second. Okay, so we're going to go with Kudan. And then we got to come up with a last name. So if he's from a family that we said, kind of the story we were going with this guy is that he goes from a family of like dedicated blade users, So it makes you think samurais, or just, like I said, it kind of put me in this like cultivation mindset, but most of the cultivation stuff that I read is Korean. Um, Not that there isn't Japanese stuff too. So let's think. What are we gonna call them? You could go. They don't really berserk, do they? Rage Blade. That seems a little on the nose, right? Um, Blade Sworn or well, let's look up names that mean sword. Just really digging deep into this sword idea. Mainly because, not just because of the feudal Japan and, samurai way, but because we're kind of leaning into this that he's all about the blade. He's really dedicated himself to it, allowing him to manifest multiple swords, which plays into the fact that he is a blade caller. Dino. Little sword. Egbert. Egbert! Good lord, that's amazing. Faisal, a name of Muslim origin that means decisive sword. Scottish in origin means sword bearer. Gilmed. Name of Latin origin. Arabic, Turkish, Indian. I guess I should more look for... How about famous swordsmiths, feudal Japan? Muramasa Singa. Let's do that. Right? List of famous legendary Japanese swordsmen or sword creators. These are good. Masamune. It's a good one. Nagayoshi. So what if mean blade edge? I'm just trying to find something that no. Water stopper. Healing from the abyss. These are neato. These are neato. Iron cutting blade. Is that a... Sounds like a move from Bleach, doesn't it? I bet some of these are. It is, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Means iron cutting blade. Let's use that one. I like it. I'm not going to be able to pronounce it worth a damn, but I like it. Now, sorry, I paused. I'm thinking of a nickname. If you've watched any of the content, you know that we have these nicknames that we put together, or titles. Because I feel like, with how simplistic we make our write-up here, I feel like a nickname or a title helps add a little more flavor or fleshes out the character so that it can kind of give it a little more life in your head. Now, I will tell you, from feudal Japan, inspiration from the fact that the Rinkai have a dragon bloodline, I feel like we could put a dragon in here for his name. That puts you at Dragon's Blade, but that feels so I don't know. I don't want to say played out, but it feels so easy. You calling them a dragon, the Dragon's Talon, or I guess it doesn't have to be the Edge. I like something Edge maybe. Excuse me. And the other thing with these is I've done it quite a few times, but saying if I called him the Blade Caller, right? Even though that's his archetype, it makes him feel like he's the main character. And we've already talked about one of the things I like about Intrepid Studios' Ashes of Creation video game is that you are a side character supporting the main character, which is the world. and all the events in the world and how it's adapting and fighting, the progression of the nodes, of the characters and humanity coming back into the land of Vera and trying to redevelop after the fall, the apocalypse, whatever. So I don't always like calling them the blah blah blah. I don't have a problem doing it in some instances, but like say the Bladecaller, it makes this character like supposedly like the one and only, you know, and that's not the case. Especially in an MMO world, that's not necessarily something I would want to go with. It makes you feel like you're, like I said, you're the one and only, you're the hero, you're the protagonist, and as much as we like that, it's not the best for a video game in an MMO standpoint. Like in an MMORPG, you want everybody to be equally special, thus making nobody special, so that they can all fight, combat, conflict, and war with the world itself, and that's what'll make the game really good, in my opinion. You know, calling him a sword demon sounds cool, but again, that's like pretty played out. Call him the Demon's Edge. What if we called him like the Blade of Illusion? Like, see, the Bladecaller, with Bladecaller being an archetype, makes me think he's like an Apex guy, right? But saying like the Sword of Illusion or Illusion's Blade or something like that makes it feel like just a title to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm super silly. Maybe that doesn't make any sense at all, but in my head, I can't not think of it like that. So Bladecaller, we're going to have multiple blades. So I like the idea of an illusion. I like the sword. Sword illusion. Illusion's blade. Blade of illusion. Shifting, mimic. What else? Displacer beast do? No, they shift in and out. Edge. Illusion's edge. I don't mind that. What about I kind of just like the Blade of Illusion. Nah, I mean that feels a little long, right? You're not gonna be like, oh my god, is that Kudan, the Blade of Illusion? Right? Like it's too much. Too much. Let's just look at it for a second. I wonder if there's another. Let's look at what synonyms for illusion. I can't spell, so don't laugh. Synonyms. Aha! For illusion. Mirage. Ooh. Ooh, phantasm. Ooh, phantom. Spectre. Oh god, these are good. The Blade Phantom. Oh. Or the Blade Phantom. Or the Dragon Spectre. Nah, no. Boy, the Blade Phantom sounds pretty cool. Or just Phantom Blade. Spectre's Edge. Phantom Blade? Like the doesn't have to be there, just Blade Phantom? No, he's a phantom. Phantom's Edge. I like that. I like Phantom's Edge. Kudan Zentasuken. Phantom's Edge. The Sword Spectre also sounds great. Blade Spectre, the Sword Phantom. The Sword Spectre. I like that one. Sword Spectre. Boy, help. The Phantom's Edge is really nice too, though. Phantom's Blade. I like this. Just go with that. Phantom's Blade. Boy, that took a minute, huh, guys? Alright. But what we ended up with was pretty cool. I kind of like it. So we ended up with a male Renkai, primary fighter, secondary summoner, which makes him a Bladecaller. So we kind of theorized that a Bladecaller would work as a primary fighter who perhaps we took the idea of the secondary summoner taking a single target fighter into a multi-target target, so an AoE fighter, by summoning multiple blades that maybe mimic their attacks or allows them to attack from a range, like a greater range, obviously not like ranger range, but a greater range. Or could provide buffs by, like, you know, thematically speaking, multiple weapons attacking somebody, so they're focused on those, allowing your main character to, like, hit the critical spots. So that's kind of where we were thinking a Bladecaller would be. So then we came down to the name, and again, digging into the fact that they are feudal Japanese inspired, we went with Kudan, which is just an Oni name, and then Zantetsuken is the last name, which is actually, if I'm right, it means like cutting a blade of cutting iron or something like that. If you go back to the video, I'm sure it's there. I totally lost it. And then we were trying to come up with an idea. So we looked up synonyms for illusion, because a Bladecaller and a summoner, we had this idea that they'd be summoning multiple or manifesting multiple swords, or like illusions of swords. You know, they would be, but they'd be more tangible. So we looked up synonyms and we found Phantom. Love it. Found a lot of cool names, but we ended up with Phantom. So then we ended up with Kudan Zantetsuken, the Phantom's Blade, and I think it's a really cool concept for a Bladecaller. I think the next Bladecaller we make, we're gonna tweak it a little more, but I like this one as a character. We said that Kudan was like from a family who only focused on blades, grew up nothing but blades, manifesting the highest possible skill he could with a blade, not a sword and a board, not you know, whatever, but one blade, and just honed his skills and his abilities and his awareness to the point of manifesting multiple edges, multiple swords, of sword aura or sword ki, kind of pulling from this Eastern influence, and then kind of pulling in that cultivation influence from like Japanese and Korean manga. And then we ended up with this idea of this character who is just so in tune with his blade that he is manifesting these extra edges to give himself an edge in battle. So that's how we ended up with that's how we fleshed out the archetype for this character. So it's kind of got this like cultivation sword, apex of sword training kind of vibe to it, and that's how we ended up with Kudan Zantetsuken, the Phantom's Blade. Yeah. Hey, thanks for hanging around. Have a good day.